Eric Nagel's Radio Inquisition.
We gotta at least talk about the show. We haven't done that yet.
The News Junkie is on.
The three best friends you never knew you had, running through the most viral stories of the day.
The News Junkie Shawn Wasson with Sabrina and C-Lane.
You're still live on a radio station in a market that kind of thrives and enjoys talk radio down in Orlando, that you have that interaction. You go on, you're doing your own thing. You have your show prepped out. You have your people, you have everything going. But then it's like, well, so let's talk about the Ghislaine Maxwell verdict here. Let's see, she's still got to be, this is what the judge is handing down, but they still got to, approve this. Can she get a lesser, like you talk about current stuff like that. You could throw some wild theory out there. You can throw out, exact facts or whatever. And then somebody's going to call and scream and yell, or somebody's going to call and back up a point or something completely out of the blue. You still have that element, which I wish we still had. I do miss that. I do miss being on live, and on the internet is still great too. But radio still is just, it's in everybody's car. It's just easy for somewhere, somebody accidentally just stumbling across your show, and then like, wait, what are they talking? And then now they're hooked because they heard something so ridiculous that they're seeking you out.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a couple of different things going on in the show that have helped me out over time, but put me in an odd position with the live element. And I'm working on some other things too. So just to make this make sense, I have an app for the show. It's called The News Junkie. If you look in whatever app store you're in, I've spent an insane amount of money. I know if you know anybody who's dealt with app developers and all that stuff.
I have for Compound, yeah.
Unbelievably expensive and ongoing, well over six figures invested in this app. And there's social elements of it and chat and all kinds of stuff. But the key thing is that it allows people to record what I call a dispatch. And it's just like on the bottom of the phone, they hit the button, they record this in, and it fires it off. And I can see what they're talking about. I can see what the content of the message is. And then I play them back in not real time, but, very, very close to it. I could be talking about something right now, and my screen will refresh, and I'll see 10, 15 new comments have come in, and I can hit those as I'm going. And people are much more willing to do that, I've found, than some of the phone stuff. Like, to go back to what you were talking about earlier, Eric, it was not only that people were so willing to call a radio station. People, and people would call at the beginning of the show for the chance to maybe talk at some point during the show.
Oh, yeah.
4 hours.
Some would call and go, hey, look, where I'm working right now, I can't get the station in my building, or I'm out of the market at the time. But can you just put me on hold so I can hear as long as I can? We've had that. And so you got a bank of like 20 phone lines available. And then you have a couple of people call all the time. And you go, okay, I'll put you on hold. So you put that and you mark it on the screen. So now the guy's listening to the show through the speakerphone at his desk for an hour before everybody else shows up in the office because he can't pick up the station.
I think people are a little less likely to do that now. Just there's a lot of shifts have happened, but they're willing to do this. And the moving forward with the show, the other element that I like is all the visual elements. And I know obviously radio is not a visual medium, but I think there's a way to do, and some people have gotten close, I think, but to do a show that is perfectly tailored to radio. Also, good for a podcast, but visually appealing. Like there's visual elements of this. So if you're watching on Twitch where we stream, or Facebook or YouTube, you're not just watching a couple of dipshits talking to microphones. You're getting visuals. And so there's a lot of really cool technology and a bunch of APIs that I'm working with now to, at some point next year, make it so somebody goes, they want to join the show. They hit a button, something like Clubhouse, where you raise your hand, you put in what you want to talk about, and then in front of me, the screen suggests that person's there, which brings that live interaction.
It's doing the phone without doing the phone.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's cutting around the phone lines issue.
God damn, Shawn, you're on top of all this future stuff, and it's not future stuff. It's available now. It's just the way companies are. Everything's in the future. I worked at companies, Clear Channel being not Clear Channel, Infinity being one of them, where Clear Channel was pretty early on. Clear Channel used to be so iHeartRadio used to be Clear Channel back in the day.
Right.
Clear Channel was one of the first to start streaming the radio stations. Right. Infinity would never do it. They felt that it was not they're giving away content. You need to listen in the market. We don't get the ratings. We don't get any of this stuff. And especially with Howard, when Infinity started streaming their stations for 5 hours, you would just get a message that Howard Stern's on right now and they don't stream it. So you got to wait. So it's like you're missing opportunities to sell all this stuff. They were always behind is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The technology is like, hey, this new thing is on the horizon. I just read an article. They're testing it now. Maybe we should get in on this. No. And then 5 years later, like now, a lot of the companies we're going to get into podcasts.
We think this is going to take off.
We're going to start doing podcast development. We're going to start buying podcast companies. It's like you're way behind on all of this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
There was something else I saw an article. Damn it, I can't remember. Like the quote, and I can't remember. But they were talking about, at some point soon, we're going to be able to watch podcasts as they happen. I'm like, that's the radio. Or you can hear it as it's happening, and it's that's the radio.
They're reinventing television and the radio. Yeah, I saw somebody on Twitter, I think, a couple of years ago, and they're like, when I see these instances of live breaking news, it makes me wish there was a way to have a podcast live. And you're like, you've just invented radio. Yeah. Congratulations.
So dumb. I mean, look, the more successful ones, again, and they do lean more political and stuff, like a Tim Pool, or Rogan used to be live, and Rogan's not live anymore. So now they do it because of the Spotify deal. But they would just turn it on and you'd watch it as it goes. And that was Anthony Cumia's show was the same way. He'd turn it on right as he was doing it. So he's essentially doing the radio show, but in a video presentation and learning how to explain it to the radio audience, to the on-demand audience, because we do that all the time. I had people that worked for me at one point. It's like, why do you keep repeating things? Why do you keep elaborating on stuff? I go, because we're doing this now, but you got to remember, people are going to be listening to this later. So when we're pulling up a video clip or a trailer for a movie that we're listening to, all they're hearing is the audio. So we need to talk. We need to explain what we're seeing. And so that the radio version of it understands what we're doing. That's why you repeat these things. And that's a radio thing that podcasts don't know. Because some guys who are really good at podcasts, they'll pull up clips and they're just watching it. And then they're wondering, when the audio people who do their RSS feeds or their Patreon audio things or whatever, and they're like, none of this makes sense. You just sit there and watch stuff all the time and you don't explain what you're watching.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on in the industry right now. But one of the main things that I see, like you say, I'm on top of everything, or I'm working with this stuff. I do all of this on my own dime. Like, there's a lot of people in radio who would bitch at the company and go, why aren't they giving us these tools? Or why don't they give me this? Or why don't they give me that? And I've always been the person who says, I want to invest in myself. That's, like I said before the pandemic, I have a full studio with better equipment than the actual radio station has. And I put that investment in myself with the app, with all this other stuff that I'm working on for 2022. There's a lot of money that goes into that. Thankfully, I am able to pay for that. If I was a smaller content creator, it would be a little more difficult. But because I can, you can either sit on the money you're making, or you can and beg for the company to give you these new tools, or you got to go out there and you got to do it yourself. Like, you had a radio studio basically in your house before virtually anybody I knew. You got to be willing to spend money on yourself.
Yeah, we used to stream the radio show. We had this company called Pal Talk back in the day, in the 2000s, that we just turned on the cameras and started streaming the show. And then months would go by, and then all of a sudden they were like, wait, are you live streaming the show as it goes? Yeah. You can't do that. Why? It's like, because we didn't have a deal. We don't have a deal with them. They're not authorized. You're giving away our content. And it's like, it's a video element that you're not subscribing for. You're getting the audio to listen to us anywhere in the country and in the car, but the video stuff is not part of this. So let's work out a deal. We were ahead of that curve to just start streaming everything as it was going on with live video. So we would do it through Pal Talk. And you know how you did it? You had digital cameras connected in. We had 4 windows open. And for the audio feed on one camera, we took an out from the board with a head jack, adapter, plugged it in to where the mic should be, and adjust the volume, and that was what was streaming over there. It was that simple.
Yeah.
Audio from the board right to there. You're hearing everything as it goes. That was it.
Yeah, you just got to put a little more effort into it sometimes, and you're willing to do that. I'm willing to do that. Some people are not as much. Hey, one question I wanted to ask you, Erik, was: has your life improved, stayed the same, or gotten worse since the Opie and Anthony Reddit group exploded and turned into just a whole bunch of fragments of dust on the internet?
It never. Here's the thing. I can't say like everyone say, "Oh, you didn't know about it, or you didn't bother you and everything." Nobody wants to see you being shit on all the time.
Of course not.
But you don't look. If you know it's somewhere, you don't go and look at it. You don't look for it. You don't seek it out. The ones that do are the ones that you become miserable. That they're constantly looking. One of the hosts I know was constantly looking at that stuff and then pretending that it didn't exist and just became more and more miserable. The other host went going right for it. He was looking at it. He knew everything was going on. He was going right after people. That's another way to deal with it. But that also, I don't think, was working well for their mental health in the long run. So, like, either way, it's like you can't ignore it and you can't take it on head on. Be aware of it, but then just learn to navigate away from it. Like, all right, I know that's there. I can't live my life looking at that. I need to just keep moving and building my own thing, and eventually people will, hopefully discover it and follow it.
It's also impossible to achieve any impressive level of success and not have something like that. Just inherent with the success of something being big and having a big audience is that micro community is going to pop up all over the place. And they're going to have some bad stuff to say.
Oh, yeah.
And reading it is like, I thought like all these years in radio and good and bad emails and messages coming through, at some point you totally get used to it. And I explain it to my girlfriend all the time. I'm like, if 100 people walked by me and 99 people were like, man, your show is so good. I love radio. And you brought me back into the world of news talk radio by listening to your show. They say all these nice things. The one person
you remember,
like, you suck.
Yep.
I'm like, that guy I could point out of a lineup 10 years later. And that's why people do it,
Yeah. They want to be noticed. They want to feel like that they got you. They got under your skin. And a lot of it is just it's how do I put it? At least for the O&A community became, you're the hero, but if you stay around too long, you become the villain.
Yeah.
So when you're around for a long time and then the show falls apart the way it did, they're accusing one host not sticking up for the other host, and then they're accusing this host for causing the whole thing to happen. And then, it just fragments and dissolves and mutates into something terrible. And like everything good becomes bad. Like Trump said, everything woke turns to shit. And people got mad at him, but all it is just rephrasing the whole, if you're a hero and around too long, you turn into the villain.
Right,
That's just what nature is. So
it's inevitable.
So yeah, if you don't have haters while you're doing something, then you're not doing anything right. You're not getting the right attention.
My favorite thing that I see that I have to do.
And I hate that haters term too. It's like, for all my hate, because you see Instagram influencers and stuff that all my haters and stuff. It's like, no, you're trying to generate hate artificially instead of letting it naturally happen where you have a big family. Howard talks about this sometimes too. When he discovered that there were boards like 10, 15 years ago of just shitting on everything he does. And he couldn't understand why are you making a board? If you hate me so much, why are you doing all of this stuff? It's because they have to figure out how they can make it about them, how they can attach themselves to what you're doing and to build themselves up into something or whatever they're trying to create is by doing that. You have all the people who like you and they just like you. They don't put in all the effort and all this stuff to exhaust themselves to show that they like you. They may send you something nice. They send you a compliment, whatever, but that's it. It's easy to like something. It takes a lot of work to fucking hate something.
Right.
And they just get lost in a thing where they just constantly need to generate more and more because it's it's like a fix. You got to keep generating the next thing to hate, the next thing that how are we going to mess with these people? Oh, here's something else you didn't know. Here's a photo that we can, distort and make fun of them for that way, or this girl for over there because look at her, how terrible her feet are, and you're like, oh my God, it's just like they keep needing the next thing to feed the machine, I guess. One
of the things that I've always enjoyed in a strange way, like when I see somebody talking about my show or in one of my communities or groups or whatever. And I know this definitely happened in the world of Opie and Anthony because that had a high level of this going on, is when people would start to talk back and forth with some level of there was a level of pretending that they had insider knowledge, and they go, actually what's happening is the new CEO wants to do this, and people at the radio station are doing, and you're like, you have no fucking clue what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but they are saying it from this position of authority.
They try to fill in the holes with what they think seems logically from the outside. It's like, well, exactly. The contract stuff is this because they don't want to pay for this stuff anymore. And I go, well, that wasn't the hold up at all. It was a matter of we want more control of stuff they're putting on the company website. That was when you're like, it's something so dumb and off, and they because they don't have an answer. They need to. Well, we got to just figure it out on our own. Actually,
the fake version is almost always better. Like whatever they've created their narrative is almost always more exciting.
They're asking for $15 million, and the company's pushing back, and it's like, I would like $15 million, please.
Wait, you start to read it, and you go, hang on.
Yeah.
Should I be asking for 15 million?
You print it in. It's like the reverse at the end of Jay and Silent Bob, where he comes out with all the printouts from the website instead of going house to house to beat those people up. It's like, hang on, this guy right here has a valid point. Let's talk about this issue here and what we can do with the show.
Oh man.
Let me ask you with the news thing, with everything moving so fast, do you find because you have the radio stuff so you can get it out in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. But do you, for your other stuff where you're relaying it later on, do you find that because the news stuff moves so fast and public's mindset just float, like nobody fixates on or remembers anything anymore, right? Like this is a huge ordeal right now. Everyone's outraged, everyone's screaming, whatever. Then the next thing comes. The other day, I'm watching on in the NBC Nightly News. They do a recap of the year. Here's some stories that happened in the past year, and you look and you go, "That was this year?
Yeah,
oh, that was in February. Wow, I forgot all about that. Because it moves so fast and it's so fluid. And you do news stuff and you do topical stuff. How does it what's the pressure on you now to try to keep this stuff relevant? Because by the time all right, we did this, you go to put it out, and then 25% of the stuff you put out might be so outdated just as you recorded it.
Yeah. For video posting to YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff. I do longer videos and I do shorter videos so I can put them on whatever platform I'm going to. And this is the first full year I've been doing that as like a content creator in the video world. And that's absolutely something that is true. Like the weird thing is social media platforms aren't really built to take a video for an actively developing situation and make it go viral. Usually the algorithms make it go viral in chunks and over a number of days it accumulates. But if it goes viral in 5 days and it's a news story, now you have just completely outdated information. So I'm trying to, especially going into the next year, figure out what are you adding here and what is what is it about this that makes this evergreen so that the content is valuable after the moment. And from the show's perspective, like the live perspective form of things, it's the complete opposite. Because I always view it like there's somebody that is either the person or thing of the day. Usually have on a big story about 2 weeks. I mean, even things like January 6th and the Capitol, people only talk about this stuff for so long and then something else distracts us and we go on to the next thing.
Right.
But I like the granular, what is the thing for right now for today? And I saw somebody had done this, and I do this with my show as well. Each day they kind of did what was the story, and I do who is the person or what is the story of the day. And so it might be Bean Dad when that whole story was going on. Right. It might be Jeopardy when that goes further into the whatever is that one thing in that particular day. how can you pick that apart and make that into more? So those two worlds are incredibly different. Like this live aspect of now, what's the hot drama now? And then something that goes, I've got to make this content different now so that when I put it out there, it
can kind of sit and have a bit of a shelf life, and then also resonate with people.
Yep.
That it's like, oh yeah, I heard about like the Bean Dad thing. It's like, yeah, I heard people talking about that. I don't know what that is. And then you are breaking it down and you're giving your point of view, your side of it, and they go and look up on their own to see the news story, and then it's like they're interacting with you at that point. But it wasn't something that was so relevant at the time that it needed to be discussed the day you're doing the show, because if we did it tomorrow, we're already behind.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think like look at Opie and Anthony clips on YouTube. There's nothing about watching like maybe if there was, we talked about the Shannon Burke thing earlier or the Jim Phillips thing when there's a sort of a war going on, radio war style. People love that, and it doesn't matter what day it was. It doesn't matter what was happening in the world. It exists in its own in this sort of like snow globe of a moment where you can revisit it. It's fun, and watching it or listening to it is super enjoyable, but it doesn't have to be the right now kind of thing. I think there's just a difference between those two.
Every time I hear interviews or I read something about people who used to be at the top level of what they did, Jay Leno and David Letterman, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. Kings of late night. Now late night, so not that there's just so many shows, but just people don't watch late night like they used to anymore. They're not looking for that kind of stuff anymore. The way late night was, it was part, interview show, it was part, variety show kind of, and then a monologue and stuff. But I've heard clips of Jay and I've heard clips of Dave when they're talking like, how would you handle the Trump stuff now? Or how would you handle the stuff with the pandemic? And they just go, I thank God every day I'm not doing my show anymore. and they're like, really? And go, yeah. And it's like, it moves so fast. It's so different than from when they were doing it. It's like, I don't think I could keep up with this. Even at the height of the Tonight Show or the height of Letterman or whatever. They're like, I feel bad for the people who are doing this now. Like Fallon does more of a lighthearted thing. They'll touch on a couple of things, but it's more goofy, whatever. Mm-hmm. Colbert goes the exact opposite way, trying to drill everything within his monologue. And either side is not making any impression on media or entertainment anymore. Like you'll get some like Fallon's show learned early on that it's like, all right, we're doing a TV show, but it's really for YouTube clips. That's all we're doing this show for. So everything breaks down for YouTube clips. And that's where they care about the success of his show, is how it's doing online and the impressions and the clicks and all that stuff. Colbert tries to do some of that stuff, but still tries to maintain that late night variety kind of thing. And either side doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
Like all the late night shows with Conan leaving, he was the last one out of all of them that people cared about. When Jon Stewart left the Daily Show, no fault of Trevor Noah, but no one cared.
Right.
The Today Show, the Daily Show just did not become a thing that all the news shows talked about every day. No one cared about it anymore.
Another thing that makes all of that so difficult now, and I'd love to hear, I'm sure you've been impacted by this in some ways too, since you do a lot of interviews and stuff. And that is because of all of the things that have happened in the last 10 years with social media, and with the ability for people, especially celebrities, to interact with their audiences in real time, whether it's via an Instagram Live or whatever. They could do this a million ways. Podcasts. It has made it so now more than ever, the celebrities don't need these outlets. They don't need to go to the Tonight Show if they don't want to, right, and get to that audience. They might go to totally different places, but they can, once they amass an audience, let's say The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, he doesn't need to go to anybody to promote anything. He has a big enough of a social media footprint. So it kind of makes it even more difficult, because now I would think at least it's harder to get those people.
Oh, yeah. They would go there to use, it's funny because it's reversing the process. They would go to Good Morning America or the Today Show or these shows and do their grandiose clip where they're appearing, and then take that clip, put it on their social media, and then they boost their social media, and they're getting more views of them on another show on their stuff than the clip of them on this show and the show's accounts putting it out. Like, oh, look, it's got 2 million on the Today Show YouTube channel, and it's got 19 million on The Rock's Instagram of people watching that. So
Yeah.
I would love to be at that point at some time, somewhere in my life. It will never happen, but if it were to, that where I could just put stuff out there and not have to worry about promoting it everywhere, would be fantastic.
Right. Another level of independence for sure.
What's next for you? What's left for you? Because you're doing great with the News Junkie thing right now, but say the Real Radio flip format, can you sustain doing it on your own? What do you do next?
Yeah, I think I could. I don't think I have a problem with that. I have something I do called Secret Shows, which is like an uncensored premium show. Sort of like in comparison to the compound media setup that you have going on. And I'm working on expanding that even more. And that gives me a good backstop. And then I make money and a decent amount off of all of my social media accounts. At least anyone that I use. I think the only one that I haven't really monetized, even though I could, is Twitter. But I had a lot of success with Facebook and YouTube in particular this year. And that alone would generate enough to keep me floating along. But I think I'm much more interested in moving ahead, trying to do this thing where it's a parallel audio show that is perfectly done, or at least as close to perfect as I could ever get, for the radio listening audience, those people who are still in their cars, who are still tuning in that way. That is a great show for somebody who's listening, whether it's within 24, 72, or whatever hours with a podcast, and then build and build and build on these folks who watch live on platforms like Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. I think that is a really big part of what's going on moving forward. I think that not only will I maintain the platform that I have on actual broadcast, I think in 2022, I'm going to be able to expand on that quite a bit and explore some new markets. And there's a lot of stuff like that I'm working on. It's this hybrid world, and you know all about it, where you're in between traditional broadcast and all this digital stuff. And it all still excites you. You just got to make it all work together. And mastering that's the key part, I think.
That is the difficult part of that. I mean, well, actually, the most difficult part is if you're not into this or figuring this out, to make that transition and take that step to start learning about that. Because I've seen other hosts, be it TV or radio, if they're not doing it anymore, it's like, well, they could be doing so much more that they're doing, and they're still sticking to this one way of doing stuff, where if you were on multiple platforms would be doing great for them, but they're still doing it in this one way. And you go, can't make money that way doing it anymore. You can't get any headway or even kind of a following. And the ones you have are just, it's so small and weak. It's not doing anything for you.
Yeah. One thing, I don't know if you ever think about this, but before we wrap everything up or whatever, I did want to throw to you one thing that always gets me, and I feel like an asshole whenever I have this sort of thought experiment, but I will see people in particular, let's say on Twitch, and they've done everything right. Like they bought the equipment. They
spent so much on the lighting and the stuff. Yeah.
And it's like crisp. And they then went out and they got somebody to make all these graphics for them. And you're like, damn, okay, it looks really, really good. And then you see in the corner, there's one person watching, and it's you. You're the only person who's tuned into this. And you go, this is the difficult part. This is the thing that people always forget. All of the people, not all of them, but for the most part, the biggest names in podcasting were able to be the biggest names in podcasting because they already had an established fan base, or they were utilizing another popular medium like broadcast radio, or television to promote the new thing that they were doing. There have been very few cases where it was bottom up and these people came from nothing and built their new audience. Now, that's definitely happened with YouTubers and with some of these other people, but there's this idea out there, I think, that some people have, where I'm going to start my Twitch stream or I'm going to start my podcast, and people are just going to start listening in droves. And it's sad because I want that person to have like an audience, I want them to have a shot at it. And sometimes Twitch, you don't even get a fair shake.
I found Twitch is a good platform to, I don't want to say originate, but to present everything you're already doing. And this is a good channel to put it out there visually, right? And interacting wise with the you can get subscribers, you can get paid subscribers for their followers, a chat room, etc. But it's not good for promoting. It's good to execute, but it's not good to promote and accidentally find. People will find your videos on YouTube because of the way the algorithms are, your keywords, your tagging, all of that stuff. And like if they're looking up Spider-Man stuff and you happen to have a unique rant that was getting some attention, all of a sudden it'll show up. You saw this, it may show up on the side there. There's ways of accidentally finding you. Same thing on social media with hashtags
Discovering,
and all that. Twitch isn't that. You can't push it accidentally to people to find you.
Yeah, what do you discover? When you discover the people who have the biggest audience. So you're like, who are the top people who views right now?
Yeah.
The folks on the bottom getting stuck on the bottom. Whereas the beauty of broadcast radio is that at any time, anybody in a car in that metro can turn a knob and end up on your station. And then you get a shot at them.
Yeah. When I saw this during the pandemic too, everybody's like, well, I'm going to hook my PlayStation up to Twitch and I'll just start streaming video games and I'll start making money streaming video games. And you're doing that. And then it's like, no, because the people that are successful at streaming their video game stuff also have like a million different graphics and stuff coming on with like new subscribers. Like, so you're watching the game, but all of these, remember the Simpsons episode where Homer built his website and it's every kind of clip art noise thing on the on one page, and it's like, this is going to be the best web page ever. It's essentially what a Twitch page is now, where they have all the moving parts and who donated, who's the new subscriber, a hype train's coming through and all this other shit, right? But then they also are interacting with the chat and they're talking. Meanwhile, they're good at the game and they're playing stuff, but it's a whole performance going on. And these people are a slave to their own success because then they got to do this. Like they have a schedule. You got to be on there at 6 a.m. like we do a radio show. You got to be on at this time. This is work. So when people start turning on, it's like, why? I'm playing the same game and I'm trying to talk to people. Why aren't they coming to see us? Because there's 90 other streams playing the new Spider-Man game. So maybe don't play the Spider-Man game, play a game that nobody else is playing and try to figure out some other way of doing stuff. But Twitch is just not that place to grow and build. It's a place to facilitate some stuff, but you got to use everything else at your disposal to get the attention to come over there.
Well, it also breeds really bad stuff too, because think about this. If you're doing your stream and you're looking at that single digit number of people who are watching you, and we're saying discovery on these things isn't very useful. It's not a great way to build your audience. So how do you build your audience? You got to say something crazy or you got to do something crazy. And even if you think that thing is totally wrong or like, inappropriate or immoral to do, you got to do that to rise up on the radar to get the bad attention that will give you maybe a shot at something. It breeds bad stuff, man.
But what you do in some cases, like for what I do, is just you're giving your opinion and your thoughts on a subject. And a lot of the times, sometimes it's crazy, but other times it's well thought out and it's just an opinion either somebody didn't consider or think of, or it's something that somebody's staunchly against. Like you do more news stuff, and we'll talk some news stuff on my show too, but then I'll go into more daily life stuff and other social situations that I'll rant on, because people will get so charged about COVID and politics and all this stuff. Everyone has to have a label. Everyone has to have a side in there. And I'm going after moms that put chalkboards in front of their kids for the first day of school. Like that's where I'm starting to scream at them and going off on a tear. And everyone's going, why are you so mad about that? That's nothing to get upset over. It's like, well, everybody else gets, between you and me, like everyone else gets upset over that shit. So let me go after the other stuff no one would think to go after. I went after girls that I went to high school with because they're now trying to sell essential oils, and those green tea cleansing things. And they're trying to make a business out of their Facebook page and their Instagram stuff. And they're putting all the copy and pasting all the same stuff from this pyramid scheme that they give to all the people who buy into all of this stuff. I go after those people, and then people get upset with me for doing all that. And it's like, well, do you want to go talk about what, your thoughts on Biden and Putin right now? Do you want to do that? Or do you want to hear me yell at the lady that I knew for 12 years that's selling essential oils and neglecting her kids?
No, I love that personally. That's whenever people go, what kind of stuff do you like to talk about? What are your favorite things? My absolute favorite things are exactly what you said. I like to take non-controversial topics and make them controversial, right? Yeah. So like one instance I remember is in Chicago. there was a news story that came out that there had been a panda cub born at the Chicago Zoo, the zoo in Lincoln Park in Chicago. And the panda was a big hit, and everybody went and was like viewing this little baby panda. But it turns out that every panda in the world is owned by the government of China. And the Chinese government takes the pandas away. So they don't want people like breeding them on their own and all this stuff. And so I went on and I was like, we're not going to let them take our goddamn panda. If we have to go in front of the zoo, we will stop them from taking our beloved little panda. And so everybody's fired up. There's people calling in and I think somebody said at one point during one of the calls I was taking, and Kevin Matheny was listening to this and told me, like, this is what you're going for here. This is what you're aiming for. Somebody goes, I didn't wake up today and think I was going to be this pissed off about a panda bear.
Yeah.
And you're like, there you go.
And that's old school radio, at least old school talk radio, which are elements people forget now. Like even for podcasters, successful podcasters, they're doing interviews and they have their audience stuff. But when you want to generate stuff like that showmanship, that way of doing radio, even if you're not on the radio for your podcast, whatever, that's an art, that's a talent you have to develop and we need to keep alive and pass along. There's younger people who ask me about internships, who ask me about, could you listen to my podcast and tell me what you think? And I'll tell them flat out. And they're like, oh, I didn't think you were going to be that critical about it. I go, well, let me tell you why. And I'm like, and this is what you need to work on because I know I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But that generates, it angries up the blood, if you will, So when you're sitting there talking about it, it's like, I didn't give a shit about the pen. I've never even went to see the exhibit, but this guy on the radio this morning, now I'm all pissed off because I can't stop thinking about this stupid panda and how much I hate China.
Right.
Yeah.
By proxy, at the end of it, you're like, maybe we should just go to war with China. Maybe
Sure.
This is where we need to take this. So that what you're talking about is exactly what I love as bread and butter. And your people are getting pissed. People are getting riled up, but they're not getting riled up based on this simplistic binary of Republican or Democrat.
Yeah.
They're getting like, they might find themselves like, oh shit, this person who I disagree with all the time on Facebook about politics, I actually really agree with them on this thing. And you go,
right,
there's other things in the world that you've just discovered.
You're either, you're labeled politically. We grew up in a time where we were told not to label people. Everybody's unique. Everybody's special. Everybody's, treat people how you want to be treated, whatever. Now it's the old, let me see your papers kind of thing. Are you a Democrat or a liberal? Because I got to figure out if I can like you or hate you. What's your religion background? What country do you originate from? All of this stuff. Are you vaccinated now is another thing.
Right.
If they're vaccinated or not is like whether I can talk to you or be friends with you anymore. And it's like, I don't give a shit about any of this stuff. Like, I don't care. I got a little heat the other, not too long ago where I was out doing errands and stuff. And I said, I thought there was a big pandemic and everybody was worried about getting sick and all these people are dying. I'm like, why are there so many fucking people on the highway here? Why are there lines in the stores just to do this shit? I'm like, well, I thought these people were dying off. And I would go that route. I'm like, I kind of missed the pandemic where everyone was afraid I could get anywhere in 10 minutes. Like, it was fantastic. No one was on the roads. Go back to that, get more people sick and eliminate, the whole thing, the joke in Spider-Man Far From Home. Did you see that movie, by the way? No, not yet. All right. So there's a side thing, not to really ruin anything, but there's a side thing on there where it was sort of like a political movement that said Thanos was right. And I mean, like the snap like that. And I'm like, that's going to become something. And then as time's gone on from a week or so from seeing the movie, I'm like, Thanos was right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, we need to eliminate a lot more of these people.
Right. Nothing is far-fetched anymore. Like all of the stuff that you would propose, like, well, there would never be a movement to support Thanos being right. 1,000% there would be. Like,
yeah, of course there would be.
Yeah, of course there would be. And you end up looking at this. I always think like, if you visualize people, like try to visualize people in this way, if you sat down next to somebody at the bar and you're like, oh, hey, how you doing? And you end up just like cross talking to this person. You're like, I'm Shawn, I'm whoever. And then they start to tell you a couple of things about themselves. They're probably going to tell you about their family, whether they have kids, whether they have a wife, their favorite sports team, if the TVs are on that, or what they like to drink, or, some recent experience they had. one of the last things they're going to tell you is what their political leanings are.
Right.
And it's so weird that you could like meet somebody in that situation, go, oh, wow, we like the same drink. Oh, we both like the Eagles. And like roll through this. And then if they said, yeah, and you know, obviously I voted for Trump, then you'd be like, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
So now you've completely, you liked the person, you enjoyed them, but you found out this one thing that is more important to you than anything else.
We had a girl that used to be on my show, right as Trump was elected, and it was that 2016. Yeah. So that following Thanksgiving, she did not go to her parents. She cut off her plans to go to her parents for Thanksgiving because she found out they voted for him. Mm-hmm. And then she stopped talking to them after, like we heard for months, she would talk about some of the stuff where she doesn't talk to her family anymore because I can't believe they think this way. And then I'm like, oh my God, get over yourself.
There's
like,
more in the world.
It's always been like, it used to be just satire and jokes about your family, you know, like, oh, you know, when grandpa gets drunk, you know, he starts talking about this thing like that. Like you have those family squabbles, but it's what made the holidays. But you didn't fucking not talk to your grandparents ever again because, you know, they voted for, you know, Winston Churchill. No, that's a British, like Herbert Hoover or something back in the day. And then his brother who had, like, they haven't talked in 70 years. It's like, no, that didn't happen.
The only rivalry like that, Hatfield and McCoy's, was so rare that it became famous. Like that there was a rivalry going. So I mean, when I look at this stuff, you know, I think that people are screwing that up, and you can always use that to funnel into how you're doing a show, how you're presenting things out there to people. But this is a true story. I know somebody. She's in her 30s, and her family is wealthy. They have a bunch of money. This is a person who's like never wanted for a thing in their life, and fell into politics through God knows what. And became very interested in the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and somehow went down all these rabbit holes. And she approached her mother and her father, who had a good relationship with her and always like took care of her. And she said, we have to give our family money, our wealth, everything you guys have in the bank to Black Lives Matter, or I'm not going to associate with you anymore. And her family said, well, obviously we're not going to do that. Yeah. And she stopped talking to her family. And you're like, this is so drastic. And people don't seem to catch on to that sometimes. It's a world.
I don't get, I didn't get the whole everything pun, not everything's black and white, you know, like that. It's there is a lot of gray area, but, and like everyone wants to eliminate the gray area. Everybody wants to label everybody. When we went decades trying to teach everybody is, you know, equal in some aspects and unique in others. Now it's like you need to identify your pronouns and all this other stuff before anyone could even talk to you or associate with you, or it's like, or maybe even hire you at some point. I've had fights online where with something and somebody complained, it's like, why don't you show your pronouns on your Twitter account? I go, because I don't care. Yeah. And they're like, you don't care about this stuff? I'm like, no, I don't care what you call yourself. I don't care what you think of me either. It's like, I'm not attacking you for your pronoun nonsense.
Yeah, you know what I'm into with that? How many people who have their pronouns on their bio have pronouns that are different than you would think? Because it's almost always like it's she, her, and then you're like, yes, you know, you're a female. It's almost always the exact thing you would expect.
You do get a couple of, you know, curveballs thrown at you where you look and it's like, oh, they're doing a they thing now.
All right,
like, okay. I've never called anybody, like I haven't insulted them by calling them the wrong pronouns, but I call them by their name. Right. You know, I just avoided it at all costs because I'm like, there's no good that could come from this.
No,
I don't want to get involved with it. It doesn't matter. And then when you see a lot of, here's the thing. I'm not on TikTok. I don't care about TikTok, but TikTok's all over Instagram. So if I want to see anything that's going on TikTok, it's on Instagram. So I'll watch it on Instagram all the time. And you'll see the ones where they're talking about breaking down different pronouns and different ways to describe their gender and their sexuality and stuff. And it just seems like they keep making things up more and more to be like, well, this is the new label now. Well, I'm going to be more unique and come up with this label now and all that stuff. It's like, go ahead. if it makes you happy, it's fine, but don't get mad at everybody else because they're not understanding what you're doing and that they won't identify you as that, because most people don't care.
Right.
Like, get off that fucking app. No one cares. No one's fighting in the streets because, I'm an they instead of a she, him, or whatever they want to, do all that stuff. No one's beating each other up. No one's threatening to kill each other. I mean, maybe in some aspects you see some news things coming up, but as a whole, you get off that stuff. You walk around, nobody's thinking about any of that shit. They're complaining about, fucking steaks now, $9 a pound.
Right, the real life,
Yeah.
I always find the clout farming side of things kind of interesting, where somebody will take up a grift like that, and it could be that they're like, a conservative talk show host, so they're going to go, in that direction. They're going to be anti-immigration or X, Y, and Z, or they're, left of center activists, and they're gonna really hammer home all this stuff. No matter, as a radio host, whenever I look at this, I'm like, both of these are bad ideas, and let me tell you why. Because I know what happens to your audience. Mm-hmm. I know what happens to your fan base, and you turn your fan base poisonous. I'll give you an example. There's I talked to a former program director of that station in Tampa, WFLA 970 AM, and he told me one time, his going to his voicemails on his office phone is the most miserable thing that he does in his life. And he said, it's just these people who, if anybody says anything just vaguely to the left of Trump, then they are, I'm going to come down there to the station. And like, you become a person, and this is something that you should avoid at all costs, who is held captive by their own audience. And this creates the worst type of fan base and the worst type of content. And the people who were listening to this radio station, who were like the most fervent, or I should say, the loudest voices among the fan base of this radio station, turn out to be pretty poisonous people, right? And whenever you get involved in this stuff, you might be able to build a couple of numbers, but that's not long-term stuff.
No, not at all. And you're seeing it now for stuff that people love. I mean, that they do love the talk shows that they're listening to, that they're calling to threaten the general manager, but that they love, like you see it with like the Star Wars fan base and Rick and Morty fan base. Now the Marvel fan base is going that way, where they're saying, you need to cast it in, like, we need to know that these two people are in the Spider-Man movie before we go and see it, or else there's going to be a fucking problem, and God help you if they're not in the. It's like, why do you need to know what's in the entire movie before you see the movie? A trailer is supposed to entice you, to sell you to come see the movie and wonder what else is in there. Not, I need to know everything in that movie before I decide if I'm going to go see it or not.
And that's not even the fan base having too much control. That's a fragment of a fan base that's so loud.
I always say the social media fan base of whatever thing that I'm complaining about. Like when I did with Spider-Man, they forced so many hands where, like, in August, they're like, we still haven't seen a trailer, and this movie was supposed to come out a year ago. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, I kind of like the fact that I don't have a trailer for this. Mm-hmm. I want to go see it and know nothing that's going on and just kind of be surprised. But then, within that 4 months, everything's fucking ruined because somebody had to leak the trailer that wasn't fully CGI rendered and it looked terrible. So then, like, the next day, Sony had to put out the fucking trailer all produced because they weren't ready to drop it yet, but they forced their hand. And then they're like, well, is Andrew Garfield in this movie? Is Tobey Maguire in this movie? What's going on with this thing? Is this going on there? Are we going to see the X-Men now? We need to know. Why aren't they telling us if these people are in the movie? It's like, why don't you go to the movie and enjoy things anymore? Right. Everybody has to ruin everything that they like. And of an outrage thing. And again, the social media fan bases for these properties are the loudest and the most vocal, and they just want to ruin everything under the guise that they're championing the properties and the characters that they love.
Right.
And then they demand things after they see this. It goes, oh, well, this was a big thing in the movie. We demand that movie now. It's like, no, it's not up to you.
What a creativity killer too. It's like I heard somebody talking before about Alfred Hitchcock, and like there can never be an Alfred Hitchcock in 2020 for a million different reasons. But one of them is when movies used to come out, they would play a message at the beginning and the end of the movie, and they'd tell you like, hey, don't spoil this for other people. Don't ruin the movie. Don't do this. Don't do that. Let everybody have a fresh experience with it. And you're talking about like people are now demanding that we know every inch of the script before the movie's even out right now.
If they saw that at the beginning of the movie, somebody would take a screenshot and post it online. Like, can you believe this shit? They don't want us to tell you that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are in this movie.
What are they hiding from us?
Yeah, what is this? How dare you tell me it's my money? I'm a fan base. You listen to me. It's like you're not investors.
Right.
You're not investors in the company that have an actual vote and say in how the company conducts business because you're investing large sums of money in their company. You're the guy that buys the shirts, the Funko Pops, the tickets to the movies. You can have some say. It's like, man, I really, they're thinking about putting this character out on a solo project. I would love to see this actor or actress as the person portraying that thing. And then they do polls and it becomes an entertainment fun kind of thing where then they listen and go, look, the fan base might be right on this. Maybe we should bring that person in there. It went from that to, all right, so when's X-Men showing up? Where's the fucking Final Four? Why Fantastic Four? Why weren't they here? What's going on? We're going to storm Disney. It's like, oh my God, fuck off.
Right. And none of these people have given a laptop in an infinite amount of time would ever be able to come up with a storyline of their own. Yet they have so much power over what the storylines become. It's the inmates running the asylum, and this is how you just end up with garbage. This makes nothing good.
Shawn, I just realized the time. We've been talking way too long. I rarely get a chance to talk to other radio people or other people in the entertainment industry where we can shoot the shit about the business and how things are working and our own personal experiences. So I love doing things like this. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Let's promote all your stuff so everybody can go out and check everything. So give us the whole tally sheet of where they can find you all.
Yeah, I had a blast talking to you, and we should do this again. Anytime you want.
I would love to.
I'll chat with you. But you could find me anywhere on social media. It's at the News Junkie. With an IE on every platform. So at the News Junkie on Instagram, Facebook, all of them. And you can watch the show live each day. There's a podcast. There's all of that good stuff. If you want to join in, please do. I'd appreciate a listen or a watch. So thank you. Check me out at the News Junkie.
Thank you so much, buddy. I don't even know if we even we talked about so much stuff. I'll have to go back and then look at my notes and like, what the hell did we just talk about for the last 2 hours? That's another radio thing too. You talk for a living so long every day. You leave the show and you go home and you're seeing people. Oh, that was so funny when you said that. And you go, wait, what did I say? I don't even remember what I just said 4 hours ago.
Right. Yeah, that happens all the time. What'd you guys talk about on the show today? I have no idea.
Check the rundown on demand when it comes out. I'll listen with you because I forgot.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I had a blast talking to you, man. You want to chat again? We'll do it for sure.
Definitely would love to do that, Shawn. Again, congratulations on this part's not being used for the show. We're that part's done. But yeah, congratulations. Every time I looked at your stuff, I was like, man, he always finds another way to parlay a lot of this stuff. And I watched a couple of, I think, your live streams where you have it set up where it's like you have a table and it was like a wide camera thing on the far end of the room where it's you and like a couple other people sitting in there doing it.
We've got PTZ cameras, which can like move live around the room. Because I didn't see too many people doing that, I was like, let's add some motion to the streaming. We've got like an 8 camera setup in the studio, and just like a rack full of every toy that I could possibly get my hands on.
At the radio station or at your house?
At my house.
Okay.
Yes. Nice. I haven't been back to the radio station in coming up on 2 years.
There's probably no need to go back.
No.
Because I know Howard's not going back. Elvis Duran's show here in New York goes back if they have a guest that's going to come in. They'll come in and do it, but the rest of the time they're just Elvis has 2 homes that have full studios in there, so he doesn't need to be anywhere.
Right.
And a lot of other shows too. Like I missed the all being in the same room doing all that stuff. Like, 'cause my show hasn't been together in 2 years probably. Yeah. But you at least have that where they can come over and do that, so you can still capture that, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way stuff's done now, it's like, well, why am I going to waste an hour to commute in to get there, to get set up, and then get all this stuff done. It's like, it's so much productivity that you're losing by just downtime. And it's not even the good downtime. It's just an effort to get somewhere, to get the train, to get back to this place, and then try to figure this stuff out. And because you get home, now you're tired, you don't want to do anything. Where if I had stayed at the office, or if I'd been doing this I'd been working for another 2 hours instead of wasting it trying to do all this other needless nonsense.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as long as you can create the chemistry, I think all this stuff just makes everything a little bit better.
Erik Nagel. Radio Inquisition.
And this concludes our interview with Shawn Wasson. You can listen to the News Junkie out of Real Radio 104.1 in Orlando, or on the iHeartRadio app, or go over to thenewsjunkie.com to check out their podcasts, live streams, and a whole bunch of secret shows. Thanks always going out to John Feldman and Goldfinger. And for more episodes of the Radio Inquisition, you can subscribe to the It's Erik Nagel show feed on iHeartRadio, Apple and Google Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also go over to youtube.com/It's Erik Nagel for the video versions of this and other shows. That's it. Until the next time, be seeing you.
This has been Erik Nagel's Radio Inquisition.